Today we'll be using chalk pastel to finish our shadow study, and before we can do that we need to review a little bit of the vocabulary associated with light and shadow. So in our drawing, our form is actually an apple. All right, our light source is the flashlight. The light side of the apple is the side that the light actually shines on. The form shadow is not the one that's on the table. The form shadow is the shadow that we see on the form, and it's the darker side of the form. And the cast shadow is the one that's actually the shadow that's thrown on the table here. It's cast onto the table. And the cast shadow, as you can see in this illustration, is darker, closer to the object. So now we're ready to start our chalk. And most people freak out because the chalk gets everywhere and it gets super dirty. But what we're going to learn how to do is control the chalk a little bit. The first thing we want to do is choose a color for our apple, and it can be realistic or non-realistic, but we need a color that has two shades. So I could use this green because I have two shades of green. I could use blue because I have two shades of blue, or I might want to choose orange and use orange and brown because we know that orange plus black equals brown, so brown is just a shade of orange. So you're going to choose your color, and we're going to start with the lighter color. I'm going to use green. So I'm going to start with my lighter green, and if me and my shoulder partner both want to use the same color, we can just break the pastel in half and each have half. The first thing I want to do is determine where my highlight is. So my light's shining here. This is a high point on my apple. That's where my highlight will be. So I'm just going to make a little circle to remind myself not to color there because that's going to stay white. Now I need to determine where my light side starts and stops. So my light side is here. It's the side where the light is actually shining. So if I follow the beam to the end, I know where my light side is going to start and stop. Follow my beam of light, it travels in a straight line, and now I know. I'm going to take my lighter color, and I am going to color in my light side carefully. Now chalk pastel will start to powder up and make all this dust when the paper can't accept any more chalk in that area. So once I start to see that dust, I'm going to stop coloring in that area. I'm not going to smear anything yet, so I'm just coloring in my light side. Now I'm done with this color. I'm going to put it back and I'm going to get the darker color. The dark color I'm going to color using the form shadow here. I'm going to put in the form shadow using my darker color. So I'm just going to try to trace out my apple there and shade it in, and it's going to look funny to start. It's going to look like there's a big stripe through the center here, a line. And I know we don't necessarily want that, but don't worry, we're going to fix it in a minute. So why don't you go ahead and determine your highlight, pick your light color and your dark color, start with your light color to do your apple on the light side, and then choose your dark color and do the darker side, and then stop. Don't blend anything, don't smear, just color that much. So you can stop the video while the kids get that much done. Okay, now we're ready to do a little bit of blending. We're going to learn how to do chalk pastel by only getting 1 or 2 fingers dirty. So we're going to pick one finger to be our dirty finger, and that is going to be the pointer of the hand we write with. And we're going to look where this dust is here, and we're just going to kind of blend it in a controlled way. We're going to start with the light side, and I'm just going to kind of blend my light side using that one finger. And once I've kind of moved all that dust around and filled in my shape, now I can go into the dark side. I don't want to start with the dark side first, because if I do, I might change the color of my light side. So I'll go from light to dark. Now we can take care of this stripe. So I have a little bit of the dark color on my finger. I'm just going to blend that line out. This extra dust that we see here, we'll just take our paper, and on that scrap paper in the middle of your table, just shake it off. Take a couple seconds to do about that much. So you may stop the tape while the kids do that much. All right, so now we're ready for our shadow and our table. So we're going to talk about what color makes the most sense for our table. Would green make the most sense? No, because then our table and our apple are going to blend together. So I'm going to pick another color that I have two of. So I could use the orange and the brown, or maybe I want to use the blues. I'm going to start with my darker blue this time to do my cast shadow, and I'm going to do a blue table. So I'll take my darker blue, and I'm going to color in just my cast shadow. Now where I get close to my apple, I'm going to put a little extra oomph in there and color a little bit harder. Next, I can take my lighter blue and do my table. And I'm just going to use the side of my pastel here to fill in my table quickly. Notice that I'm not coloring and putting my hand down when I color. I'm kind of lifting my hand up. This is not a lazy art. If I put my hand down like that, I'm going to smear everywhere. All right, so I still only have 3 dirty fingers, which is great. Now I'm ready to blend my table. So what I'll do is, once I have my cast shadow in dark and my table in light, I'm going to blend this time from light to dark, but I'm going to blend the light into the dark. So I'm going to pick a new finger because I don't want to use my green finger on my blue table. So I'll use my middle finger. And I'm going to blend this way. So it stays dark closer to the form. And now I can just kind of blend the whole thing . Like this. Now, if you accidentally get some smudges in your background, don't freak out. We'll find some ways to clean those up in a little bit. So go ahead and stop the video and get that much done. Your table and your cast shadow, and blend those. All right, so we have a big pile of dust here. So what we'll do is we will just shake it off on that scrap paper, and that will keep our table nice and neat. And now we're going to go back, finish up our apple, and put our light in there. There's a little dip where the stem comes out and creates a little bit of a shadow. So I'm going to go ahead and use my darker apple color there. And that's such a small area, there's no need to smear or blend it, so I'll just leave that. And now I'm going to pick a color for my stem, and I'm just going to go with boring old brown. And put that in there. And I don't want to blend that either because it's such a small line. I can pick any color for my flashlight, and I warn against black and white often with chalk pastel because they can get our colors kind of muddy. So I would go with a color. I think I'm going to go with blue for my flashlight. So go ahead and I'll color my flashlight blue. You may use whatever color you want. Well, we'll stay away from black and white. So go ahead and stop the video and get your stem and your stem shadow and your flashlight colored. All right, the last step we need to do is put our color spectrum in our light beam here. And we learned a great acronym to remember the rainbow order, and that was Roy G. Biv, but we took the I out, so we just went BV, BV. So we're going to start with the red and go ahead and just color our first line red. And I'm not going to put a ton of chalk pastel down. I don't want to blend it over my apple too much, so that's about enough. And then orange, then yellow. I have my choice of greens here. I'm going to go with the lighter one since that's the one I used on my apple, this light side there. And then I'm going to go with some blue. And I'm going to freak out because I don't have violet. But because I understand color theory, I know that I can make violet by mixing red and blue. So I'm going to go ahead and just put a little bit of blue down. Get some red and overlap it. And now I'm ready to blend my color spectrum. I'm going to take a clean finger and work from red to violet. You can go ahead and stop the video so that you can get that much done. Now I'm ready to take care of some of these smudges. And I didn't get too many smudges in there, so I'll just pretend. Oh, I got all these smudges back here. Okay? I'm not going to panic or freak out about that. There's an easy way to fix those. So, before I can fix them, I need to clean up. So I'm going to take my paper. I'm going to dump the powder off on the table. I'm going to cap my oil pastels and put them, or chalk pastels I should say, and put those away, turn those into the box. And I'm going to wash off my hands with a wipe. So once I get my hands wiped off, I knew the routine. I wipe off my hands, and then I can wipe off the table. I want to get all that chalk out of my way. I'll go ahead and take my scrap paper and shake it off in the garbage can and get that out of the way. And now that my hands are clean and everything's clean, I can use an eraser to erase any smudges in the background. Now, it's not perfect, but it sure will clean it up quite a bit. And now my chalk pastel drawing is done and ready to go into my folder. So now you can go ahead and put those chalk pastels back in the box. And once that's done, you can empty off your scrap paper of the powder